Now this Pierre Paulin jump hour is actually the third jump hour watch that I've experienced, but this one, unlike those other two, has something rather different going for it. In fact, this one has definitely stood out the most to me. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches, and I'm talking about a very interesting design from Pierre Paulin, a subgroup from the Mercure watch group, which makes some amazing watches, makes some great watches, makes a lot of jump hour watches. And as I mentioned, this is the third of those jump hour watches that I have experienced. And strangely enough, normally when I have these watches, it's the jump hour movement that really becomes the central focus for me. But today, this jump hour movement is almost a secondary thing to consider because it's the dial that stands out to me. And perhaps I'm showing my age because I clearly know what this design is. I remember as a kid, if I ever had the opportunity to stay up late watching TV, that there were some channels that at around midnight stopped broadcasting. They just went to sleep or went home, and then this particular design popped up on the TV. It was a display screen that just sat there for the next few hours before TV started again early in the morning, and they've put this design on a dial of a watch, which I initially thought was perhaps a little bit odd. But since now having this one in hand and on wrist, it has surprised me how much I've liked it, because it's been fun, detailed and interesting, and it's just captured my attention. Now you may have seen earlier that there was a sponsored icon that popped up, and that was because this is probably not the watch I would have chosen. I wouldn't have gone and bought it myself, but they reached out to me and said, hey, would you like to feature this watch? And I thought, well, it looks like a little bit of fun. Of course, I'll have a look at it. And I'm glad that they did, because now that I've actually got it in hand, I really like it. It's one of those watches, perhaps when I saw the photos of it, I just thought it looked like a bit of a gimmick, but in hand and on wrist, it's more than that. It's fun and it's interesting, and it has drawn my attention. But because it is a sponsored video, I'm going to leave some of those links down below to the Mercure website and to an Aliexpress store that I would have bought it from if I had decided to buy this watch. But let's have a look at this watch in a little bit more detail to show you why it has captured my attention much more than I expected. Partly you're getting a watch that presents quite well for a relatively affordable price. This one costs about 190 Australian dollars. And for that, you're getting that interesting movement, but you're also getting a rather fun watch. What you're not getting, however, is any lume, so there's not going to be any lume shots today, but there's going to be a lot of vision of this dial because it is the main thing that has captured my attention, well beyond the movement. I want to talk about the case a bit more shortly because there's a few things about that too which has surprised me, but it's the dial that captured my attention. And I think it's going to capture everybody's attention to the point where it makes it a little bit hard to read. Legibility on this one, probably not its strong suit because it has that silver hand, the silver sub-second registry there, but it grabs my attention so much that perhaps it distracts somewhat from telling the time. You can read the time on this one, of course. As you move the movement, you'll see that date window that looks like a date window is not a date window, that's an hour window. And then that main hand is the minute hand. And then of course the little sub-second registry. And of course there's some numbers around the outside too that aren't immediately obvious. That helps you just tell the time, I guess. But it's the dial that stands out. It's an interesting design, it's a different design, it's a fun design, but I didn't expect it to be as 3D as it is. That surprised me. What also surprised me is this one comes with sapphire crystal. I don't think the last couple of jump hours I've had sapphire crystal, but what surprised me even more was the case design, because I just expected it to be a carryover case, but I don't think this one is, because it has this polished step down bezel, which I think looks really nice. Nice big crown, which is easy to utilize. Polished on the tops of those lugs, brushed on the sides, and then when you flip it over and look at the case back, it's a different design. It's still the Mercure line, but it is a different line. So perhaps they've made some upgrades or some changes to their watches recently. Before we go any further, guys, I just wanted to ask, for those of you that are watching this that are not subscribers, could you please hit that subscribe button? It makes a huge difference to me. It makes a big difference to me getting watches in to share with you guys. The more subscribers I have, the more likely companies are able to reach out to me and share with me watches that maybe I wouldn't have chosen, but have then surprised me. And then I get to share that surprise with you guys. So just click on that little subscribe button, please. But let's talk about the size of this watch, because I think size is a determining factor if you're choosing one of these watches or any of the jump hour watches from Pierre Paulin, because the case is a nice 38 millimeters, only 12.9 millimeters thick, but it's the nice short 46 millimeter lug to lug that I think helps this watch sit so nicely on wrist, and a nice standard 20 millimeter lug width, and so light on wrist because it is only 67 grams. And when you see it on my wrist, you'll see what I'm talking about, how nice it does sit down on my 17 centimeter wrist. It's fun, it's interesting, it's well made, and it's not that expensive, and it has an interesting movement. And well, although it may not have been my first choice, it's been one that I've been really enjoying having in my collection because of that interest factor to it. The strap, however, is probably not the best. I didn't expect it to be fantastic. It's perfectly usable. I wouldn't be swapping it out straight away. I haven't swapped it out straight away, but if I was going to be keeping this one longer term, I probably would consider putting a different strap on it. It does have some pretty good hardware on it, however, so I would even consider swapping that over to a different strap. I always talk about having a fun watch in the collection because I think having a fun watch is a worthwhile thing doing. In fact, I wear my fun watches almost more than I wear my non-fun watches, and this one's definitely a fun watch. It's a fun watch because of that dial, it's a fun watch because of the movement choice, but it's also a very wearable and easy watch to have on wrist. So thank you to Pierre Paulin and the Mercure Group for allowing me to have some time with this watch. It's really been quite interesting. And guys, if you've enjoyed this video, please maybe check out a couple of others.